We are cattle ranchers, and as such, we often have a whole beef in our freezer. But one thing you don't know is that when you have a whole beef in your freezer, all the good stuff disappears first. The steaks, the really good chuck roast, and then you're left with a freezer full of meat you're not sure what to do with. A lot of roasts, a lot of odd cuts of beef. Well, that's the stage I'm in right now. So yesterday I decided to thaw out a whole bunch of those odd cuts of meat and whip up some tasty dishes with them. I'm gonna start with a batch of slow cooker Sunday stew. It is out of this world scrumptious, and it helps me empty that freezer full of beef faster so I can get a new one. Okay, I just browned a whole bunch of beef. I salted and peppered it, sprinkled it with flour before I fried. I'll start with a bed of big chunks of onion. I've also got big chunks of carrots. Love carrots in stew. Some mushrooms. These are just brown mushrooms. You can use white, a mix of wild mushrooms, anything you want. With stew, there aren't many rules at all. I've got some fresh herbs, rosemary and parsley, and I'm just gonna throw them in whole. This is gonna cook for so long that all the flavors will definitely have a chance to release. I have some red potatoes and I scrubbed them really well, cut them into chunks. I like stew to be rustic, so I do not peel potatoes when I make it. This is where the beef goes in. For the meat, I used rump roast. Rump roast is one of those meats I never can quite tell what to do with, but really it's great. If you cook it long enough, it turns out yummy and tender. But I am not content just to use beef in my beef stew. I'm gonna cut some fried bacon into chunks. It can't hurt, can it? A little bacon makes everything more delicious, except maybe breakfast cereal. Sprinkle that on. Now, every stew needs a really good cooking liquid, and what better way to whip up one than to pour in some beer? I've just got a bottle of beer. I'll pour about half of it in. I know just what to do with the rest. That'll come later. And then I always add a little bit of tomato paste to any stew recipe I use. Gonna add most of the can, some garlic. Ooh, garlic and beer, how good does that look? And a dash of Worcestershire sauce. And then I'll whisk this together. Kind of a strange combination, but trust me, when you pour it into the stew and it cooks for hours and hours, it just turns magical. That looks great. So this gets poured all over the top. Now, because of the tomato paste, that's pretty thick, so I have some beef broth, and I'll pour in just enough till it starts to come up the side. Any kind of roast that is stuck in your freezer for a long time needs many, many hours to cook for it to be tender. If you have cooking liquid in there, it'll happen even faster. One last thing to add, I just can't help myself. A whole jalapeno, I just sliced it in half, didn't even seed it. That is gonna be one yummy stew. I'll put the lid on, set it on low for 6 hours, and that is gonna be dinner for the Drummond house. Take a look at how it's gonna play out. First, I'll make buttery parsley lemon noodles to go on the side. I'll melt butter with olive oil and throw in garlic, parsley, and lemon zest. Mix it together, then add the fettuccine and toss it around. Look at how it all coats the pasta. Yum. Then the juice of a lemon, a sprinkling of salt and pepper, a quick toss, and it's ready. So everybody gets a big heap of noodles on their plate. Then the stew, beef, vegetables, and gravy. Simply delicious. A little parsley, and that's the whole scrumptious package. One word, beef-alicious. Speedy hamburger soup. I've started by browning a bunch of ground beef, the star ingredient, and now basically everything goes in. I've got some minced garlic, and I'll add a good amount of tomato paste. I love the tomato paste. It gives it just a nice, rich, tangy flavor. And I'm gonna stir the tomato paste in just to give it a chance to start frying a bit. Of course, Lad loves the soup, so that checks a very important box for me. The tomato paste is stirred in, so I'm gonna add a can of diced tomatoes with the juice. And this is part of what makes it a quick and easy version of hamburger soup. I'm gonna add a bag of potatoes O'Brien, which is basically potatoes, peppers, and onions. It's a really great shortcut ingredient, and once the soup is all done, you would never know you have shortcut potatoes in there. Yum, yum, it's looking good already. It kind of looks like a thick chili at this point, which, by the way, would be delicious. But I'm gonna turn it into soup by adding a bunch of beef stock. This is just out of the carton. And then some sliced carrots, and the carrots are sliced pretty thin, so it won't take long for them to cook. So I've kind of figured out ways to turn this hamburger soup into a really, really quick proposition. So now I need to add some seasonings. Got some oregano, yum, yum, yum. And I like to give it a little bit of spice with some cayenne pepper, salt and pepper, of course. And then it all gets stirred together, and it is already looking absolutely fantastic. But I need to bring this to a boil, and then I'm gonna put the lid on, lower the heat, and simmer it for about 10 minutes. Right, this Speedy hamburger soup is done, and boy, does it look incredible. It is so, so thick. So I'm gonna get it served into a bowl. If you like a little more brothy soupiness, you could add more of the beef stock. So to garnish, I'm gonna add some minced parsley. And to me, this is the perfect thing to serve on a weeknight in the fall or winter with a loaf of crusty bread. And this is definitely a standby soup. I love it. Ooh. Mmm. Never lets me down. I'm gonna start with green chili pork stew. Oh, it's so good. It reminds me of New Mexico. I'm actually gonna make a big batch and freeze it as a meal kit alongside tortillas and grated cheese. I've already browned one batch of pork. I'm using pork shoulder that I cut into chunks. It's my favorite kind of pork to use for any stew or roast. It's really tough when it's uncooked, and then the longer you cook it, the more it just falls apart and becomes tender. I toss the chunks of pork in a little bit of flour and salt and pepper. The flour just helps develop a nice crust when you're browning it. I'm really searing the heck out of this pork. I want to get it really brown because that's where the flavor comes in. Now I'm gonna make the rest of the stew, and I've got a bunch of chopped onion. This stew cooks for a long time, so you wanna start with quite a nice pile. And then I'm also adding carrots. I'm gonna add some garlic, and then I have some oregano, and I'll pick off the leaves, and then I'll chop it up and add it in. So the oregano goes in, and then I have some ancho chili powder. A little goes a long way, so I'm gonna add a tablespoon, and that should be good. A little more salt and pepper. Okay, I'll stir all of this so the flavors are mixed together. Okay, I need the veggies to cook for about 5 minutes. So while they do, I'm gonna peel and chop the roasted poblanos. Okay, I got the poblanos chopped. Now I also have a jalapeno pepper, a serrano pepper, and some husked tomatillos. I put all of these right under the broiler for about 5 minutes, tossed them in olive oil first. They all got some little bit of black skin. They're not totally charred like if I had roasted them over an open flame. I'll just chop the tomatillos roughly. All of this is gonna go into the stew and cook low and slow, so you don't have to dice everything too fine. I took out the seeds of the poblano chilies, but I actually left the seeds of the jalapenos and serranos. I may live to regret that. It's gonna make the stew pretty spicy. That's what sour cream is for, right? Okay, I'll give this a stir. All this beautiful browned pork. It makes such a difference to sear the pork before you put it in. If you just put it in raw, you would never get that beautiful caramelized flavor. Then 2½ cups of vegetable broth. And finally, a couple of bay leaves. And I'll get everything stirred. I'll turn the heat down, and I'm gonna let it cook for an hour. Time's up. Let's take a look. Now, the first thing I need to do is fish out the bay leaves. I'm gonna cut a lime in half, and this is a really juicy lime. It's amazing what a difference this little bit of lime juice makes in this stew. And then I chopped some cilantro, about 1/4 cup, and it goes in, and I'm gonna stir this beautiful mixture together. Now, with the stew, I'm freezing some white corn tortillas, and then just a couple of separate containers of grated cheddar cheese. Now I've got to transfer the stew into a foil container. And while I do, let me tell you how this gorgeous meal comes together. So I'll put the pan of frozen stew into a 375-degree oven for 40 minutes, then put in some tortillas wrapped in foil, give everything another 10 minutes, and then take them out. Now it's all about serving up. Everyone gets a big bowl full of the green chili deliciousness with some of the cheddar cheese I froze and thawed, some chopped fresh cilantro, sour cream, a lime wedge, and tortillas. Dinner for 6 could not be easier. So I'm making this stew with boneless short ribs, which are my favorite cut of beef. Did you know that? Short ribs?
I did not know that.
Absolutely incredible. It winds up tasting like the very best pot roast that you've ever had, except better. It's like a luscious version of chuck roast. So I cut the boneless short ribs into chunks and I browned them. Look how brown these are. So brown. So I'm just taking them out for a minute. And in the same pot, I'm gonna add some onion chunks, big old chunks of onion, and carrot chunks and garlic. I'm gonna crank up the heat even more, and I'm gonna add some tomato paste. Tomato paste is one of the best tips I can give whenever you're making any pot roast recipe. Just add a couple of tablespoons of tomato paste, and it doesn't really give it a tomato sauce or base, but it just adds depth and interest and passion. It's so good. Okay, so I'm stirring so the tomato paste kind of hits the bottom of that pan. Look at this, delicious. So now for the liquid. Let's just cut to the chase here. 2 bottles of beer. And then a couple of cups of beef broth. Very savory, luscious stew. Squirt, squirt, squirt. And then some Worcestershire sauce and salt and pepper. So easy. You just want to be sure to start this much earlier than you need it because stew does take a while. Sprigs of rosemary and a couple of bay leaves, and then I'll stir it all together. Oh, forgot to add the meat back in. I almost put the lid on and cooked this for 2 hours.
Veggie stew.
That would have been awkward. Okay, so all this meat goes in, and you definitely want to hold it so all those juices go into. Beautiful. So now I'm gonna put the lid on, turn the heat down, and simmer this for 2.5 hours until that meat is fall apart tender. I like to serve it with egg noodles. Usually I use wide egg noodles, but these are the skinny ones. Oh, yum, yum. But I am never content just to serve noodles plain. So I'm gonna add some butter and a whole bunch of parsley. And then I always like to add a little bit of salt and pepper to the noodles. I think buttered noodles with salt and pepper are the ultimate comfort food. Just toss and let that butter just slowly melt. You can also add lemon zest. I like noodles with lemon zest, butter, parsley, salt, pepper. That's a yummy summer pasta.
And wine.
And wine, well, wine in a glass, for sure. Okay, the noodles are buttered, so let's check out this stew. Come over here. This stew. Ready? Oh,
Now we're talking.
Your sound effects are amazing, by the way. Thank you. So I'm gonna take out the bay leaves and the rosemary. It was so nice. It was all gathered up in one little section. And then I'll just use the ladle to get the stew into the bowl with the noodles. But look at this. That meat is so tender. It is absolutely falling apart. And you wanna get juice and all. You don't need to let the juice like drip out. Okay, how does this look, guys?
It looks
Good.
amazing.
It really does. You can spoon extra juice over, which I'm gonna do right now. Look, ready?
Yes.
Oh, gorgeous, gorgeous. Hearty beef stew over buttery parsley noodles. That is a bowl full of marvelous right there. It's homeschool co-op day for my oldest child, Alex, and her best friend, Meg. Every Friday they go to Tulsa to a homeschool co-op, and my best friend, Hyacinth, takes them. Every single week, she takes them, stays with them all day, and brings them home. The last thing Hyacinth needs is to worry about cooking dinner every Friday night. So I'm gonna whip up some yummy beef stew with cheddar cheese grits for Hyacinth, and that way she won't have to think about dinner at all. I've got 2 pots going because I'm actually gonna make one for Hyacinth's family and one for mine. I'm gonna brown the meat first. I got a chuck roast and cut it into big cubes. I actually haven't told Hyacinth that I'm making dinner for her. I'm just gonna run in and pick up Alex like I always do and then spring dinner on her at the last minute. Okay, the meat's nice and brown, so I'm gonna go ahead and take it out of the pot. It's by no means cooked. It looks like it is, but in the stew, it's gonna simmer for a couple of hours, and this chuck roast gets so tender. I'm gonna add an onion to each pot. The pot is nice and brown. It has a lot of bits from the meat in there. And then I'm gonna add about 3 cloves of chopped garlic to each pot. All right, now I'll just stir the onions and garlic around a bit. The pots are so hot, they're almost translucent already, so I really just need to cook them for about a minute. So I'm just gonna take a break and grab a couple beers. It's been a long day. Just kidding. I'm gonna add the beer to the stew. This gives the stew really great flavor. So I'm just gonna add 32 ounces of beef stock to each pot. Now to the pots, I'm just gonna add a few dashes of Worcestershire. Worcestershire always adds a nice savoriness, a little bit of richness. Then I'm just gonna add a little bit of tomato paste to each pot. Gives it a little bit of a tang, gives the sauce a little bit of richness, so good. And I like to add paprika to the stew also. It gives it a great flavor, but it also kind of helps with the color. And then I'll add a little bit of sugar to each pot. Now the last thing I need to do in this stage is add the meat into the pot. So I'll just slide half into this one and half into this one. Okay, now I'll just stir the meat in, make sure it's all combined. And then all I need to do now is be patient. I'm gonna put the lids on the pot, turn the heat down, let the beef stew simmer for about 1.5 hours, and then I'll put the root vegetables in, let it simmer until it's done. And Hyacinth is gonna be so happy. All right, the beef stew's been simmering away for about 1.5 hours, and now it's time to add in the vegetables. I gotta tell you, oh, this smells so delicious. I smell everything, the beer, the broth. Now, I've got 2 carrots for each pot. And then I also have 2 parsnips for each pot. And then I have 1 turnip, and that's enough for both pots. So about 1/2 turnip per pot. Now I didn't want to add these at the beginning because the vegetables would be pretty much disintegrated. So this is the perfect time to add them. Let them simmer for about 30 minutes till the veggies are nice and tender. The last thing I'm gonna do is thicken up the cooking liquid a little bit. I'll drizzle in some beef stock into 3 tablespoons of flour, and I just wanna make a really, really smooth, pretty thin paste. Now I'll just add a little bit into each pot, and then it's gonna keep bubbling just for about 10 minutes or so, and it's gonna make the stew just perfect and rich and thick.